The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows.
Trusted me with your life and your time and your money, and you paid me to come out. You're my student. I'm going to own that forever.
Never go downrange with a stapler without having extra staples with you.
That I wanted to break me. I not the other way. I didn't want to break in the gun. I wanted it to break me.
Have a freaking open mind and don't be so hardcore about being Instagram famous and knowing everything.
And everybody says, well, use your handgun to fight your rifle. And I'm at Walmart. I'm not fighting in my house to get to the rifle and go back and see them.
Your students are not idiots.
This is the After Action Project, and we're bringing you the student's perspective on firearms training. This is the podcast that takes you inside the eyes of the student and the mind of the instructor, from practical to tactical, medical to legal, and everything in between. If there's a course for it, this is your fly on the wall after action destination. This is the After Action Project.
Tonight's sponsor is Southwest Gunsmith Technologies. If you go over to afteractionproject.com/giveaway, we're doing a giveaway for a gift certificate to get some work done to pretty much any firearm that you own. Get some laser stippling. I still don't know how to say that dang word. Cerakote job by Rick Kennedy out there. We're giving away a couple other cool prizes, and that's afteractionproject.com/giveaway. Tonight, we have Daniel Shaw of Shaw Strategies and his guest, Corinne. We're going to be discussing the Patrol Rifle Problem Solver course. So if you guys want to head over to shawstrategies.com and see a little bit more about what they have going on over there, feel free to check them out. And Daniel, I was looking into your background and your bio, and your training and what you do for the firearms industry kind of speaks for itself. But for those folks that aren't familiar with you, how did you get started in firearms training, and why do you do it?
You want the short answer or the long answer?
Whichever you would prefer.
All right. I'm going to try to make this super fast. So I joined the Marine Corps right after I turned 17 because I grew up in a house where, like, you don't watch TV and you don't do stuff and guys don't play with dolls, so I couldn't have G.I. Joes. But I could entertain myself by reading, like, Christian-leaning military novels. So I did that. And I learned that Marines were awesome and they were, like, the best ever. There's like, normal people, and then there's Marines. So I knew I was going to join the Marine Corps. And I found that is true, actually. Joined the Marine Corps, and I was 17 years old. I'd been 17 for like a month and a half. Didn't know anything. Went through recruit training, all that good stuff. Got assigned as a Dragon missile gunner, where you shoot an obsolete missile at tanks, where they can shoot like 5 shots at you while your missile's still like puttering toward the tank. So since it was obsolete, my platoon got tasked with this really awesome duty of being the security element for Force Recon Platoon, where we were taking down naval vessels and ships and oil platforms and rescuing hostages and precious cargo and all kind of awesome stuff that I dreamed of doing. And I used to stand next to these like super awesome ninja Force Recon cats that could all be in professors somewhere in universities, how smart they are. And I would just take notes right next to them and learn stuff for a year straight. And then I got sent down to Paris Island to be a marksmanship coach, where I learned that I don't know anything about shooting guns. And then I learned how to teach is what I really learned down there, and learned how to reach a variety of different learning styles. And I learned that I love to teach. And then long story short, skip through a few times where I go back to the fleet, a couple deployments to Iraq. I'm this guy who's working for the gunner, who's in charge of all the weapon systems and the training for all the infantrymen in the battalion. And I was like his right-hand man. They'd send me out to run ranges, teaching companies things, teaching other platoons things. My platoon commander's pissed at me because I'm not doing my job. I'm doing another thing, helping the battalion. Next thing I know, I've got, like 6 years later, I've got guys standing next to me, like taking notes, just like I was. Kind of came full circle. And I realized then at that moment, like my hobby of learning guns and learning how to teach and everything else was kind of a hobby, even though it was part of my job. I just loved doing it. But what it really showed me was I got to be right. Like, I can't be wrong. These guys are taking notes and trusting every single thing that I say, and they're not going to question it. They're not going to go do their own research. They're going to take it to heart, whatever I tell them. So I damn well better be right. So that kind of forced me to start really diving into what I was doing. fast forward a little bit, I end up in a position where I wanted to go burn cocoa fields in South America with Navy SEALs in a fast platoon. They don't do that anymore. I go to the school for that, and they keep me at the school to be a weapons instructor. I tried to get away from a teaching billet to operational billet, but they kept me as an instructor there because I was doing good with gun stuff. So I honed a lot of things there. And next thing you know, retirement comes up, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I had been doing a podcast for almost 10 years, and everybody's like, dude, teach a class. I'll take it. So I started a company, started traveling around teaching, and been doing it ever since. And I still learn every day that I don't know anything about guns and shooting.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you something, Daniel. When you said, you got to have it right. You have to be right all the time. And that's something that hits kind of close to home with me. What I do for a living is also train, but I train instructors. So my job is to teach the next generation of instructors to be the best they can possibly be. And I have that same, mantra or saying in my business and with my instructors and my co-instructors is we cannot get this wrong, because these people that we're training are going to go out and train the next generation of pistol shooters or rifle shooters or whatever. So the question I have is, how do you deal with that kind of pressure as an instructor? And then B, what do you do to prepare yourself to, quote unquote, always get it right?
So I think one of the hallmarks of a good instructor, I don't care what you're teaching, whether it's guns or writing or whatever it is you're doing, I think it's humility. And I see the firearms industry lacks that a lot, because all the instructors want to be these amazing, like, prima donna, like I'm a firearms instructor, and somehow that makes them a celebrity, and everybody wants to put that title on, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Like I don't get it. I've been teaching since I was 19 years old, and I'm about 20 years. I've been teaching for 20 years, and it's I don't have to own. Whenever I approach it, I do a lot of things and I fail at a lot of things. So even though I didn't even know I was trying something the last 6 months, but I was trying it and it didn't work. Whether it's a new venture, something in firearms related, or something in film, something in writing, who knows? And I fell at those things. And what I think about my failures are, this isn't my final product. This isn't my final anything. This isn't my last class I teach. This is going to be my best class I've ever taught. And then my next class is going to be the best class I've ever taught. I've got to say, and I said it to Corinne and everybody else in the group in both classes, I have been wrong about so many things in my life that I believe that there's no possible way, based on that historical evidence, when I honestly look at myself, there's no way what I'm about to teach you is 100% correct. There's no way I'm going to give you 100% correct information today. But I am the most right that I've ever been, and I'm going to work my butt off to be more right tomorrow, the next time I'm in front of a class. And that's how I deal with it. I tell my students straight up, like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to learn something from students this weekend. I'm not so ingrained in my curriculum that I won't change something in the next class or in the middle of a class if it's been properly tested, vetted, and everything else. So that takes a little bit of time to prove things. Just because it looks cool doesn't mean it works. It's proved in a variety of different ways. But I get a lot of ideas from students and a lot of ideas that come back to the next class. And I take a lot of classes. I take a lot of training from a lot of good instructors and some instructors that nobody's ever heard of. And I learned a lot about teaching, a lot about transferring knowledge, and not just transferring knowledge, but transferring and inspiring people to get on a quest to increase their knowledge. I tell students at the end of every class that I don't ever want to hear anybody post on the internet or say to somebody that my instructor said this. I am not your instructor. I don't want to be your instructor. I see you as my student for the rest of your life. If you took a class with me, you trusted me with your life and your time and your money, and you paid me to come out, you're my student. I'm going to own that forever. If you ever need me, I'm going to be there for you, whether it's a courtroom or you're buying a new gun. But I don't want anybody to ever look at me as their instructor. I want to be one of hundreds of people to help you along your path in quest for knowledge. And I'm just a piece of that puzzle.
That's exactly right. And I was going to say to Daniel, I couldn't agree more. I'm a new instructor, but same thing as everybody else. I've been shooting forever, and I don't know what I don't know. And it's almost scary if you go back and look at Facebook posts, if I would have posted them 5 or 10 years ago, of what I've changed today just by learning. And every single instructor class I take, every single class that I go somewhere and take, something else pops in there to be like, oh, okay, my thinking's way off. I'm totally wrong here.
Yeah.
And then, you're so hardcore about, I only do it this way and we should only teach it this way. And Jeremy is the one I teach with the most. We should only teach this way, Jeremy. And then he's like, I don't know. And then I go take another class and I'm like, Jeremy, I was totally wrong. Foot in my mouth. We need to not teach only that way. So yeah, it's probably the beginning of the best answer you've already given, Daniel, is for instructors, have a freaking open mind and don't be so hardcore about being Instagram famous and knowing everything.
Agreed.
And,
it's okay to not know, and it's okay to be wrong. And it's just when you need to be figuring out that you're wrong and get it right. And then don't have so much of an ego that you don't go back to your students and say, look, I was wrong about this. This is the right way. And tell them, I've told many of my students, hey, I used to teach this way. I've changed it. This is the way I teach it now. And basically, not so much that I was wrong back then. Sometimes I was just wrong. My interpretation of the data was wrong. But sometimes just new information has become available and I can make it more right.
Yeah, I agree. So, moving on to Miss Corinne here. I hear she's also an instructor, although she's your student on the podcast tonight. She's an instructor too. So I'd like to hear about Corinne's background a little bit.
Yeah. Is my mic on? Did I remember to unmute it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So I am a firearms instructor in Olathe, Kansas, at Centerfire Shooting Sports. And I began instructing in 2012, but my background, not as impressive as Daniel's at all, but my background is actually music. I went to a conservatory of music for violin performance, and then I had a private music studio with private students for about 6 years. And until my husband, who's a police officer in our city, really pushed me hard to take a concealed carry class that I had no interest in taking whatsoever. But he took me to the range a couple times and got me proficient enough to pass the qualification course, which I did really well at, as most beginners do, but beginner women especially. And in that class, I got the crap scared out of me with the responsibilities surrounding owning a firearm, carrying a firearm, use of force, all of that. And I decided there was no middle ground. Being in the middle was dangerous. I was either going to be all in or all out, and all in meant doing as much education as I possibly could. Now, coming from a musical background, that whole methodical practice and research and all of that was already ingrained in me. And so I took that to firearms training and eventually became an instructor and immediately was put into a range as their female instructor. When I got to the range, we were just opening. The lead instructor's name is Rick Staples, and he was the instructor at the police academy that my husband attended. And Rick Staples remains to this day one of the best, if not the best, firearms instructors I've ever had. And so for the first 2 years, when I was the second instructor under him, I took every course that he offered every time that he offered it. I was like, Rick, I'll show up and I'll just sweep the floor while you teach, so I can just be a knowledge sponge. I can get as much info as possible. And I did go out and take other courses, say from Bob Vogel. I did take a Bob Vogel class at that time, which is a long time ago now, it seems like. So in any case, in 2014, I had these skills. I had the skill set. I'd been to all these classes. I helped teach all these classes up into the point where I could take over. So I had all these skills, and we're like, well, what else are you going to do with it besides teach, which I really, really enjoyed. Coming from teaching music to teaching firearms actually isn't all that different. It's the teaching that I love. And I began in 2014 to shoot IDPA. I think I shot one IDPA match. I think I won that one or the next one, but immediately moved on to 3-gun competition, which is rifle, pistol, shotgun, all in the same course. And it just took off from there. It just, the opportunities that I've had to travel over the country competing, also teaching as well, are insane. I teach with Centerfire here when I'm home, but also I've had the opportunity to train all over the country and the world with Team Zero, with Instructor Zero, which I think I met Mike in Arizona there when we were taking one of those classes. But that's a little bit about me. But like Daniel said, I want to be a perpetual student. And so I was able to, Daniel invited me to he was nice enough to invite me to his patrol rifle problem solvers course. And then I was only planning on staying for the 2-day course. And then at the end of the second day, Daniel's like, well, do you want to stay for 2 more days? And I'm like, yeah, I have guns. I just need ammo and we'll do this. So that's a little bit about me, instructor, student. That's what I love to do. I'm passionate about teaching, but I always want to be learning something new. So when you guys are talking about, instructors being humble enough to understand that the information that they're teaching now simply is the best, like Daniel said, interpretation of the information and the data that they have right now, but understanding that in 5 years from now, that is going to evolve, and being open to that is really the mark of an excellent student and instructor. So I was happy to take that course.
So when we're looking at classes that we want to review and we want to have instructors on, and going through the courses that Daniel offers and the ones that you took, I feel like we could probably spend several episodes covering those different classes. But the one that I was really excited about and hoping that we could review is the one that we're going to talk about today, and that's the Patrol Rifle Problem Solver course. I own an AR-15. I don't train with it, and I don't really see myself going out and training with it too extensively, just because that's, for what I do in my day-to-day life, it's not something that I'm likely going to fight with. And everybody says, well, use your handgun to fight your rifle. And if I'm at Walmart, I'm not fighting in my house to get to the rifle and to go back and see them. But I think for law enforcement officers,
God forbid you be practical in the firearms industry.
Yeah.
We have to say things that get people shook up. You can't be real.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, but I think for the law enforcement officer, I think this is the training where they should, and again, this is my opinion, but I think they should be as good with the rifle, if not better, than they are with their handgun. And especially here where Andy and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where our law enforcement officers seem to be involved in a higher number of shootings, just because we're one of the more violent states in the country. So Corinne, what were your expectations going into that class?
So I first was looking forward to taking any class from Daniel because he was an instructor on my list. But my goal for that class was I had a brand new IWI Galil Ace 7.62x39 that I wanted to break me. I not the other way. I didn't want to break in the gun. I wanted it to break me. I wanted to learn everything there was about that gun and be forced into a situation where I was going to be at a disadvantage in a highly physical, long course, high round count. Probably going to be the smallest person there with the heaviest gun. I have taken AR classes before. I've taken urban rifle from Clint Smith. I've worked with the AR platform a lot, not only for defense, but also for competition. It is my main platform. So I thought I would be cheating myself if I took another class with the AR platform. I wanted to shake it up and get proficient on the AK. So I expected to get my butt whooped. I expected to trial by fire on this new gun, which I was intending to take, and I did take the next month, I believe. Daniel, was the course in August or September? It was in any case, in about a month, I was taking it to a competition, the Red October Kalashnikov Championships in Utah, and I wanted to kick some major ass. So I knew that this course, I was going to get a bunch of information on the technical side, on the defensive side, but at the same time, the hours I was going to be putting in, getting familiar and proficient with this firearms platform was really going to help me also in competition, because I know I was going to get into some really crazy stuff that was harder than anything I'd have to do in competition, and I was not wrong.
So I didn't make you a bad competition shooter like I thought I was, like for 4 days straight?
Despite what the internet says, defensive training makes competition shooters better.
Does it go the other way? Competitive shooting, like
yes, I think so. I think that there is a link there. And I've written stuff about this. I've talked to countless people about this, but and I love that. I didn't say this. This isn't my. I wish it was mine. What is it? Gunfights aren't competitions, but. No. What is it? It's competition isn't a gunfight, but every gunfight is a competition. So you have some of the same factors. You have a time deficit, not only for competition because you're trying to be the fastest there, but in defensive scenarios, you're already out of time. Otherwise, you would have had time to get yourself out of there. So you're trying to be the fastest. You're trying to be the most accurate. You have to know your firearms platform in and out in all sorts of crazy scenarios, environmental concerns, when you're bleeding, when you've tripped and fallen, when there's dirt everywhere, when you're in awkward shooting positions, when you're fatigued, when you're stressed out of your mind. And I know that the stress and fatigue of battle, if you were, is not the same thing as the stress induced by a timer, but sometimes your brain will think it is. And so there is that artificial stress from the timer, from people watching you, from being under pressure to perform, that really does get that heart rate up and get that stress level to a point where if you work with it and if you learn how to push through and manage through it and get your mindset right and really focus on your task, how can that not help you? You know, if you come in your everyday life to the realization that right now I have to fire my gun, I have to think of a plan, I have to execute it, and I have to do it with confidence, and I need to know that I can do it. You know, that there's the correlation there. I think that you guys might agree or disagree.
No, I agree. We had a guest on. He was a USPSA shooter, Grandmaster, and he shoots with some law enforcement buddies. And you know, people will bring up the competitive shooting will get you killed in a street fight, and to their response is typically which part, the shooting fast or the shooting accurately part. So I think, you know, between the two, I think that really sums it up. So Daniel, if a law enforcement officer is going to take that class, what do they have to show up with to complete that 2 days of training?
You know, I expect officers to show up with the right attitude, which is one of the things with some officers, depending on like if chief made me come, or if they're like that 10 to 15% of officers who go out on their own dime and seek training. Those are totally different. But just their patrol gear, you know, what they wear. If they're on a special team, a SWAT team or SRT team or something, you know, maybe they'll wear that gear some. But I have in my course description wearing the clothing that you will and the gear that you will most likely have if you're in a fight with a rifle. That's how I want them to show up. You know, if they are on patrol every day and they don't have an extra AR mag on their gear somewhere, then I want them to run without that extra AR. I don't want to put on a new magazine pouch for my class. I want them to realize that they need another pouch on there. They should be carrying a spare magazine on their gear every day, even if they're not getting out of their car with their rifle every time. You know, I want them to learn a lot of those things. So come dress how you are most likely to use the gun. And that's pretty much it.
You know, it's refreshing to hear it put that way. And that's, you know, I like to train with what I carry. So it's typically the appendix inside the waistband, the neo mag, maybe a mag pouch if it's going to be a higher round course. Let's talk about the actual course itself. Corinne, the description says that it's intense and there's really not much downtime. What does day one look like for the student in that patrol rifle problem solver course?
I'm trying to think back to day one. It's the stuff that you do at the end that sticks with you the most, but I distinctly recall that the progression of skills, either a review or development or introduction of new skills, was on point. So we really did focus on, the whole crawl, walk, run thing, like you got to be able to stand still and hit a bullseye first, right? You got to be able to load and unload your gun and manipulate it and fix malfunctions. And then we'll add one-handed stuff. And then we'll add movement and stress and buddies and communication and weird, awkward positions and cover. And so it just went up like that. So, day one, if I'm remembering correctly, Daniel, was a bunch of skills review and making sure that we were where we were supposed to be so that we could get to the more complicated techniques and scenarios and get the training benefit out of it that we needed and not be struggling with something that was simple. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, pretty much day one is I didn't mute myself, did I? No. Day one is basically, I think of it as fighting or gaining the tools to fight while following my 4 safety rules. And that's what it is. It's ready positions. It's the ready positions that you don't know right now, but in a second or in a few hours, they're really going to matter because you're going to be working with a buddy. You're going to be working around cover with a buddy. So basically everything just kind of builds up, and, we go through stoppages, clearance with 2 hands, stoppage clearance with 1 hand, transitions to handgun, getting the big gun back up, transition back to the big gun, and doing that with a buddy, communicating. And I use a lot of stoppages and problems with the gun and communicating with a buddy, really just to induce stress and get people, you're thinking with a gun in your hand for 2 days straight.
Well, you got to share those 4 safety rules with us.
I can do that. So I'll do it like I do in class. How about that? Somebody give me the most common safety rule out there. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Never point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy.
That is a good safety rule. Give me another one.
Never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot.
Yep, you shouldn't do that. All right, you shouldn't do that. How about one more?
I'm going to give you the NRA one. Keep your firearm unloaded.
Oh, God, don't do the never. All right, so, yeah, you guys hit two of them, and then there's the never point a weapon at anything you don't intend to shoot. Keep your finger straight off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Keep it on the weapon on safe until you intend to fire. Keep it in a case or whatever you want to go with the NRA thing. And the one I hear all the time is treat every weapon as if it were loaded, or every gun is always loaded, or those kind of things. So those are common. So I was force-fed those for years in the Marine Corps, and I never even thought them at all. And then, one day, years ago, I was thinking, and I wasn't eating crayons. Don't make the Marine jokes. That's scared that I'm thinking. But I wrote my own safety rules, and I got a lot of when I sent it to a lot of my friends that are trainers and some old dudes that have been in the training business before I was born and everything else, some mentors of mine and friends of mine, they were like, hey, if you do this, it's going to look like you're being pompous and like more than Jeff Cooper, or more than these people and everything else. And like, that is not my intention at all. And if we all have that attitude, how will we ever progress? That is like, I just think that's a horrible attitude. Let's grow. Let's progress. And if you want to bash me for rewriting safety rules, that's fine. If you hate my safety rules, I don't care. I like my safety rules, but I'll change them tomorrow if I realize something's wrong with them or I see a better way to do it. So if I told you to treat every weapon as if it were loaded, and then I told you to never point at anything you don't intend to shoot, and then I told you that you keep shooting low left because you're moving the gun while you're pressing the trigger, and you need to go home and practice pressing triggers better, I am giving you a condition where it's okay, as long as you unload your gun and clear it and everything else, you don't have ammo around, I'm giving you a condition where it's okay to violate 2 safety rules. It's okay to go home and dry fire, pointing a light switch on a wall, a piece of tape on a wall, a TV, whatever. It's okay to dry fire, but don't ever break these 2 safety rules, because what do we say happens if you break 2 safety rules? Then we all say it's catastrophic, right? You break 2 safety rules, it's all over. Somebody's getting hurt, having a bad day, leaving here with more holes than we came with, all that kind of stuff, all the little cliches that people say at the range. But I just gave you a condition where it's okay to violate 2 safety rules. And I am not against dry fire. I think everyone should have a good dry fire regimen. I'm against the safety rules that remove power from themselves, that it makes it where me being your gun guru that you've never taken a class before, and I'm your instructor the way you see me, and I tell you to don't violate these, and for God's sakes, don't violate 2 of them at the same time, but go ahead and go home and violate them. It's like they're thinking, well, when else is it okay to violate them? Is it okay to violate them at a gas station when I have to shoot somebody? Can I do this now? What other conditions allow me to violate the safety rules? So they lose power. So I rewrote them in a way that I hope so they don't lose power. And number 1 is be relentlessly aware of your muzzle, ensuring it's always pointed in the relative safest direction. So whether I'm relentlessly aware, this is a constant act. It's not just for right then and there, not one time. It's relentlessly aware of my muzzle, ensuring that it's always pointed in the relative safest direction. There is no downrange. There is no berms. There is no side berms, front berms. There's none of that out there in the world. So, but there are relative safest directions, and that's where your gun should be pointed. If I'm at the gas station and I've got my 8-year-old with me and he's standing in front of me, as I draw my gun from the holster, carrying an appendix, clearing clothing, I need to be making some kind of movement or moving him out of the way to make sure that I'm clearing him as I draw my gun, and I'm clearing foregrounds and backgrounds as I'm presenting my gun to the target that I need to shoot. It is a constant thing that we have to be thinking about all the time, and you're not violating that if you go dry fire or anything else. Next is pretty simple. Keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you're on target, ready to fire. Your finger should not be on the trigger, and it should be outside the trigger guard until you're on target and you're ready to fire. I've often added to that until you have made the conscious decision to fire. You have decided that I am going to press this trigger. That's when our finger goes to the trigger. Keep the weapon on safe. This is one that it depends on the situation and the context of what I'm teaching, who I'm teaching. If you're running a Bred 92, I'm going to tell you to keep that weapon on safe until you're in the act of presentation. If we're drawing to fire right now, without a doubt, I have to put rounds on target, then my weapon can go on fire during presentation. If I don't know, if I have not positively identified this target, I am not 100% ready to shoot, I may be giving commands, then that gun should not go on fire. That gun should stay on safe. And then lastly, until I've made that conscious decision to fire. And then lastly, be sure of your target and ensure that its foreground and background remain clear. So not just be aware of your target and beyond. I'm telling you to be sure of your target. Be sure this isn't your uncle coming in the middle of the night because he was kicked out of his house because he came home drunk and you knew where you hid your key and you needed a place to crash on your couch. He's a shadowy figure, but he's still your uncle. Be sure that you're shooting the right person. That may mean put a light on your gun, give a light in your hand. So positively identifying that this is the person who needs to be shot. And then also I'm clearing my foregrounds and background. Ensure that your foregrounds and background remain clear. I may be firing 3 shots, and sometime during that, there's people running for the exit, and my foreground and background are no longer clear. It's my responsibility to make sure my foreground and my background are clear. I have a variety of tools that the trained person would have to make movements and move around. So it's a lot of options to follow those. And that's when I say that with ready positions, with handgun and rifle, it's all the whole first day or so is basically how to fight while following those safety rules. Because I don't care if you're brand new or you're kicking indoors as a SWAT officer or you just smoked Osama bin Laden, you need to follow those safety rules. You're not going to outgrow those safety rules. Have to be following them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard anybody explain the safety rules like that at all. So I think that's pretty cool, and I really like it. Corinne, now that you've heard his 4 safety rules in your instructor courses, do you utilize these safety rules, or what do you think?
Yeah, I have actually started using the most relative safe direction in the keeping the gun in a safe direction, because it's absolutely true. And I had always been taught that ready position is dictated by your operational environment, so it's not just static. Every time that you pull the gun, it's going to be the same draw stroke. You might have to add the movement. You might have to do something weird. You might have to be pushing somebody out of the way, which, and clearing your background and foreground. And that is something that I know we're talking about the rifle course, but in the pistol class, one of the last drill, we did something I had never done before. Which, and I don't know if Daniel wants me to say what the drill is, but in any case,
no, you can. Okay.
There were targets. It was a field of targets, and some were, he would call out who we needed to engage, but we needed to move. And it was, you couldn't just draw anywhere, because then you would be pointing at a friendly. And then of course he got his butt in the way, and we had to push him out of the way to control him. We had to make sure that we were being safe while we were doing that. And then we couldn't just press the trigger on a target unless we knew what was behind the target. And I had never done that to that extent before. Minimally, in competition, you want to take a look at where your what's behind your target, so that you don't get a shoot through. And then, sometimes that counts against you. Sometimes it won't count at all. But I had done that minimally, but this was totally different because it forced you to engage your brain to a level that I hadn't before. And I know everybody knew their paper targets and no person is actually getting hurt. But you know what? It doesn't take that much imagination to envision that you're actually in the shopping mall and people are running and screaming, and you're having to talk to these people, which is another thing that Daniel had us do, is use our voices, start saying those good guy phrases, and really, really, it was empowering. I hate that word, but it was empowering because you really took charge of the situation, and you slowed down your thinking enough to make sure that you thought through every action before you did it and were sure that that was the right thing to do. So that was a long answer to how did I like the safety rules, but I liked them a lot.
I like it because I find myself kind of expanding on the treat every firearm as if it is loaded. Well, if it's your defensive handgun and for whatever reason you unloaded it, and you treat it as if it's loaded, but it's not loaded, it's going to be the same kind of situation, right? It's and I love the relative safe direction point, because you're told these safety rules on a square range where there is a safe direction. It's going to be into that big pile of dirt behind your targets. But if you're in the Walmart parking lot or the Smith's parking lot, there really isn't a safe direction. There are safer directions than others. And I like that you really engages and you get the student's mind to really process where that's going to be and that it's going to be a different place each time.
It gets you thinking, and it ties into the ready positions that we go over. And it gets you, if I have to go into a door, open a door, fight through a permissive or maybe even like a non-permissive crowd or just people trying to escape, whatever, and my gun is out because maybe I just had to use it or I thought I was going to have to use it, where do I put my gun? I've got to get from A to B. My wife and kid are at the food court, and there's gunshots happening at the food court. Do I wait and get there and draw my gun? There's tons of little small micro decisions that have to be made. If my gun's out, do I take the time to put it back in the holster to run there? I don't want to be running with a gun in my hand. So one thing we should have good guy talk coming out of our mouth is one thing that I preach constantly in the class. If you've got a gun in a public environment and it's out, you better be looking and sounding like a good guy constantly, without a lull in that looking and sounding like a good guy, or because the responding officer is about to get you, or you're some other concealed carry person is thinking, wow, it's my time to be on liveleague.com, World Star Hip Hop. Like, I'm going to shoot this guy. My dream's going to come true. That's going to happen. You're going to have all those crazies out there. So we need to look and sound like a good guy. Well, where do I put my gun? And that's where the safety rules come from. Do I high compress ready, where people just spend all the day on the range? Doesn't work so great. Oh, I can go Soul. Well, everybody's on the ground, hugging the ground, getting low. There's little kids and everything else. I'm muscles with my legs. Other people, Soul may not be the best. I can go Temple Index. Now everybody can see my gun. Maybe I go Holster Index. Maybe I go back to the holster. So then I have to also go with what is the least worst position for my gun to be in right now. If it's in the holster, it takes me longer to deploy it to shoot somebody. It's if I need to shoot them. So I'm safer for myself and everybody else, but I'm less lethal for the bad guy. So it's everything is a balance, man. It's all of decisions. And if you don't make those in training, you're going to probably not make them well in the fight.
Starting to fanboy over here, man, because it's really refreshing to hear that. So I'm going to have to get myself to get us back kind of into the patrol rifle course, because otherwise I could spend here and talk, I think, for 8 hours with you guys on the safety rules and in that aspect of it alone. Corinne, what was the hardest part of that class for you?
Okay, the part that I hated, which meant it was the hardest, is when we were getting in very unconventional shooting positions with the rifle, even when we had both hands to use, but then he would say, okay, just one-handed. And it was, getting down behind weird cover, just maybe a railroad tie or a blade of grass or, really awkward. And we always simulated something. Okay, this is a car. This is, I don't know what else we just everyday objects or cover that you would have. And I found that to be so awkward and so challenging that I started to get frustrated with myself. And of course, at that point, I was pretty physically fatigued and mentally fatigued. Well, I was beginning to become mentally fatigued when I was struggling. But you know what, that's okay. That was the first point. I mean, I really had to be on point and have full grasp of all the skills that I had bringing to the class, and then all the new information, and really be engaging my brain. But at this point, it was just tough. And, I found myself looking around at what are the other guys doing? How are they getting through it? And that was good because I was learning from the other students on the line with me. And of course, Daniel's there, to, figure it out. Well, what do you have? What if you did this? And I'm like, oh, okay. And so just being forced to struggle and still fight through it and figure it out really, for me, kind of re-engaged that spark of the fighting spirit that in competition, you kind of, this is something negative that could happen in competition, is that when something goes wrong, the only consequence is you may not finish as high as you wanted to finish. You have a malfunction, you should know how to clear it, but if your gun stops working, you see people kind of just struggle and give up. And then you're just like, well, I don't know, I can't fix it. Whereas in 2014, when I started, I would fight that sucker. I would, if I had to tear apart the gun on the stage and put it back together just to finish the stage, I would. And so that struggling and having to figure it out really kind of relit that fire of I'm just going to do what it takes. I'm going to do what it takes. I got to do this. So that was the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I'm yelling fight through it to everybody constantly all the time because I can tell some people are wore out. It's not when I've got a lot of officers and they're wearing their full gear and everything else. And I see some looks in some eyes. I've seen a lot of people quit in some hard situations in my career in the Marine Corps. And I see them thinking about it. Like I could smell it when somebody's thinking about quitting. Corinne wasn't, but I could smell it when somebody's thinking about maybe I'll just go a little slower and I'll just kind of give up on this, or I'll just stop altogether and make up some excuse or something. I got a cramp in my leg or something. I can smell it when it's coming. And so I always encourage them to keep going, like fight through. They're going to appreciate it if they do. But before we go any further with Corinne, I got to explain Corinne to you. Her hair is down right now, so she has a personality, and she's fun, and she's laughing, and she's saying intelligent things. Whenever she shows up at the range, her hair is up. She is a completely different person. Corinne is all business. I don't think she smiled for 4 days straight. But then at the end of day 4, when we were about to do the debrief, she took her hair down, and it was like, who is this person on the range? Like, I didn't even recognize her. There's a lot of folks out there who post videos and stuff on Instagram and Facebook. So when Corinne's saying she was struggling with something, or it means she was upset because her shots were 2 inches outside of the very center of the target. Corinne is probably in the top 3 most all around best shooters I've ever observed in my life. And I've seen some good shooters. Corinne is she's the real deal.
Thank you so much.
You know, there's a switch there that happens with some of us, and there's some that doesn't. You know, for us, we commonly teach concealed carry students who's either never shot a gun before or they've only shot a handful of guns. And when we teach how to draw properly in our class, and as we're doing it, you know, everybody's joking around and laughing and giggling and have a good time. And at one point towards the end, I stop and I say, okay, now let's start talking about why we're really here. Why are you guys here to learn how to use a firearm and carry a concealed weapon? You know, start getting that mindset, you know, start thinking about it. You know, if you're doing this to potentially have to save your life or a loved one's life, get that switch in your head, start imagining it. And you mentioned it earlier, Corinne, about it's not really hard to start imagining and thinking about that Walmart parking lot situation that we often use, because Walmart always has bad things happen. Get that mindset in your head about how serious and why you're here. And a lot of them, you'll see the faces change automatically. You know, I don't have the skill to smell it yet like Daniel does, but you can see it in the face. And I think that's important. One other thing that you touched on, Corinne, that I really like, I've been to a couple other instruction courses, and they talk about the why. Dave Spalding was a big one. Explain why you're doing what you're doing and why you're teaching. The other thing that really hit me there that you said that I like is Daniel's coming up to you and saying, figure it out. Think about it. Think about what you're doing. Think about how you're going to fix this. And for me, when I go to classes, I like to be worn out physically and mentally by the end of the day or the end of the 2 days, because you've thought and you've worked so hard to be better. I think that's really important. And it sounds like that's kind of what Daniel does. And maybe one of you guys can expand on that.
Well, I'll start with did I unmute myself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll start with my why. My why is in 2 parts. Why I teach is because I love learning, but then when I can pass that on, specifically when I teach women, beginner courses, basic pistol stuff, or basic rifle stuff, a lot of women will come to class and they already are kind of beat down emotionally and mentally, thinking that they can't do this, they don't belong here. This is a guy thing, or this was their husband's thing, or I don't want to do this in the first place. This isn't even my scene. I don't like this vibe, and I'm not smart enough to do this, and I'm not strong enough. And they sit down in my class and they say, I'm scared and I can't. Those are the 2 most common, because no matter how many people I have in class, the first couple minutes I sit them down, I ask them, why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of most? What are you hoping most to get out of tonight? And it's, well, guns scare me. I at least want to be safe, and I can't do this on the gun. I can't run the slide, blah, blah, blah. And, 2 hours later, their entire, their face has changed. Their eyes have lit up, and I'm not teaching them how to shoot guns. I'm teaching them that they can do anything. That they can literally learn to do anything. And so it's that confidence that they gain while learning firearms, but then they can take that skill set and they can do anything with it, including using it for my second why, which is it's just, I have this very strong sense of good versus evil. Evil shouldn't win. Nobody should take my choices from me. Nobody should take my family from me. And I don't ever want to be in a situation where I'm helpless to defend myself. And, even if it's, I'll fight with anything that's available, but to sit there and go, it's not fair. I was overpowered. I didn't have the tools that I needed. I didn't have the knowledge or the skill set. That's not acceptable to me. I should be able to stand up and fight for what I love, whether it's my country or my family or myself, because somebody loves me like I love my family. So it's not right that I'm taken from them. And, it's not just when we talk about, well, you tell people the why, that this could happen. What if what if they're in the mall or the Walmart? This is not hyperbole. This is the news. This is 3 miles from my house. This is, we have shootings at my mall all the time. 3 miles from my house, we had a young girl abducted and murdered and raped and left for the coyotes to take her carcass. That's not okay with me. And so that's why I train to fight. And, those are my whys. If people come to me and they don't have the desire or the passion to use the firearms for self-defense, fine, but learn something. And that will become a habit, and they'll continue to learn things that they thought were outside of their grasp. So those are my whys.
Love it. Love it.
Who is this class for? Is it for every patrol officer, or do you think they need to bring a certain level of skills with them or have a certain number of years on the job?
It's not for everyone. I did it here in Wichita as an open enrollment class because I taught here for 3 years, and I have a lot of students here who are just really solid shooters. I mean, the class Corinne was in was, I think we had 12 people, and they were all just solid, well-rounded shooters, and maybe 4 of them were at the area of really good. And a couple of them were law enforcement officers. One of those arguably may not have been ready for the class, but he carried his own. He did well. But it's for the people who have put in a little work with the rifle. They're going to get the most out of it. But I teach this class every year at OTOA. They used to make me teach like 2 days at OTOA, and now I started teaching this class a couple of years ago, and now they make me teach it 3 days in a row with 3 different groups of 20 people, which is awesome. I love supporting the Ohio Tactical Officers Association. So I go up there and do it, and I get all kinds in that class. I had last year, I had this one officer show up who had not been through a patrol rifle program, who had just been issued a rifle that he couldn't carry in his vehicle yet until he completed the patrol rifle program. And somebody said, hey, you should take this class with Daniel. It'll get you up to speed. That person who told him that had taken my class like 4 years ago at OTOA, and it wasn't the patrol rifle problem solver. So this guy shows up with no rifle skills. I put him between 2 people who were awesome. And by the end of the day, he didn't get any better at marksmanship really and shooting well and accurate. But, man, he knew how to run that gun, clear stoppages, reload, communicate, shoot, move, do all those things. But because this class is not I'm a stickler. Everybody's taking my Carbine Vitals program. They know that I am an asshole about precision. Like, we need to be shooting guns good. This is a rifle. It is like a freaking laser at the distances that we use these things in. And you should be dead on. And anybody can draw a handgun or a rifle and put 10 shots in a torso-sized target. That's not good. That's mediocre. That's nothing special about that. We need to be training to be fast and precise, because you're only shot maybe 50 yards and all you got is a kneecap sticking out behind a wheel. We need to be able to turn on extreme precision at close ranges and long ranges in some aspects. So I hold a high standard of that. But this rifle class, we look at targets a few times just to kind of keep people honest. But it's not a shooting guns good. I don't have marksmanship standards in the class. I leave that up to the officer. So they need to be they need to already be able to run that gun and be able to be precise with that rifle and stay under control with that gun. So it's, I would say a little bit, they've been through a patrol rifle program, spent a little bit of time with the gun. They don't have to be awesome, but they need to be average with the rifle.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's something that I have kind of the same thing with my pistol classes is, come to the class with a good attitude and the proper equipment that we've requested, and then let's run the gun. and see where we're at and have fun with it, and teach you some skills outside of just putting a bullseye down there. But I like that a lot. But Corinne, I have a question for you. What would you, if you had somebody that came to you tomorrow and said, I'm going to take this class, what should I know about it that you have experienced? So what would you tell somebody that wanted to take this class that you wish you had known before going into that range or onto that range, whichever, indoor or outdoor?
Well, I feel like I was prepared for the class, but I realized why I was prepared, and because I was already a good marksman, like Daniel said. I mean, I did come with a significant skill set, and so that's why I didn't choose the AR platform that would be, I don't want to say easy, but not as challenging. I wanted to be challenged. So I would say to somebody, you need to be honest about your level. In every course, there are students who are going to be cheated, and there's students that are going to be brutalized. You need to have taken some training before, whether from Daniel or somebody else, in the basic handling, and be proficient. You need to be able to do reloads. You need to be able to be a proficient marksman already. You need to have done something under stress, even if it's just introducing the timer in your own training. You need to be able to get down and get up. Don't be afraid of bruises, and just be willing to keep your ears open and to just try new things. So I would also say make sure that you have tested your gear, because it's highly physical. You're rolling around on the ground. Something that really helped me is that I was already familiar with communication. And not just, okay, these are the couple words that I'm going to say to somebody when they say this to me, but have done it before when people are firing around you, which is a completely different world. And no, it's not the real world in training. I get it. But I think if I could pick 2 or 3 things, it would be absolutely, I was already familiar with communicating with a partner, and that absolutely helped me. Marksmanship, I wasn't perfect, but I had already trained accuracy under stress. That helped me. And then I had worked with ready positions before. And so that whole relentless muzzle awareness, although I'm not perfect at that either, it was pretty well ingrained in me, which if you can imagine, my partner, when I was working with, he's everybody's taller than me, right? But he was Daniel at 6 feet. I mean,
he's a big guy.
He was a tall guy. So if I'm behind him and in single file line and I've got my muzzle up, it's got to be up. It's got to be pointing at Jesus, or it's pointing at the back of his head.
It's high, or you shouldn't be using it.
Or shouldn't be using high ready. You know what I mean? So in any case, those 3 things, you need to already have a toolbox full of those skills before you come to this course, or you won't get the benefit of the training that you deserve.
The most important thing, and we had one of these in the class, and I had a couple of them in the handgun class the next day, because the handgun class is totally different. I don't care if I've had many people who are like 85 years old and bring their 86-year-old wife, and they come to the class. Like, if you're a SWAT cop on one end, a soccer mom on the other, that's cool. We're all going to have a great time and learn stuff. But this one, you need to be a safe handler of weapons, safe and proficient handler of weapons. And you need to have the attitude of, I am not going to outrun myself. I am not going to move faster than I can think. And I would keep telling these people that were a little bit behind some of the others, like, hey, just stay at this good training pace. I like what you did right there. You didn't go too fast. You just were at a good training pace and you were learning. And that was good. Next time we can turn it up just a little bit, because you just took that curve at 70 miles an hour. Next time we can take it at 71. All right. But I don't want you to go 80 yet.
Yeah, you've kind of touched on the question I was going to ask you. I have a friend that did jiu-jitsu for a while, and it's something you said, that you took the mediocre student, you put him next to 2 of the best students, and he was able to excel. And that's what he would tell me on jiu-jitsu, because they'd go roll with each other, and they'd start the worst, newest guy with the absolute best guy. And the goal was for that exact thing. Once you start rolling with the good guys, you have that desire to want to be better and learn more. I think that's pretty cool. But let's go into this. Let's go into this a little bit further, Daniel. It's kind of a tough question, maybe. Let's say you do have that mediocre student, and I'll give you an example. He's shooting low left consistently the whole class. How do you take time and give him the attention he needs to better what he's doing without slowing down the rest of the class?
Well, I mean, that's easy. In the handgun class, I have that time built in. So we're a system that we go through at the beginning of the class till I've got everybody shooting little knots, right? Like we work through it. Rifle, kind of the same way, and we'll bring it down there. I will do like, martial arts does this a lot. Martial arts has gotten away with this for so many years. It's ridiculous, where they have people paying to come in. And I think it's awesome. I want to replicate it. I'm not knocking it. Where they'll have people paying to come in and take lessons in jiu-jitsu or karate or whatever they're doing. And then they'll have black belts who also pay to train, come in and teach those classes while they're back here like counting the money for the guy. Like they're all teaching themselves and they're all paying to do it. And it's awesome. And like, man, what a system. And I don't know how that happened, but it needs to happen in the gun world. So there's always a few people in the class who are teaching something at some level. And when I say at some level, they may not be out there with a website traveling around teaching. Then again, they may just have a wife and kid that they teach. They may have a parent or a grandparent that they take out shooting. They have someone that they are the firearms guru in that span of influence, in that circle. And there's a lot of those. And I'll explain that quickly. Like, hey, you were going to have to do this. And this is the most common problem. Everybody's shooting low left. We're going to go through a little system, and you're going to see why they're shooting low left, and I'm going to show you how to make them just stop shooting low left, all right, because it's super simple. We make this gun thing. Instructors make it like so hard, like use my curriculum and my techniques, and you'll be awesome, and we'll do it, and only I can lead you on your journey. This shooting gun stuff is so easy. Point the gun where you want the bullet to go, make the gun go bang without moving the gun, and the bullet's going to go where you want it to go. That's it. Now, it's complicated at the same time, but that's really all you have to do. You don't have to be like some guru who wrote 10 books or anything to figure that out and teach that, right? Like I am not a brain surgeon. Like you don't have to be that to do this, to get this across to somebody. But we overcomplicate things and we use these big words to try to sound smarter than we actually are. And that happens all the time to firearm instructor. I've been guilty of it in the past. I will probably be guilty of it again in the future. But this is a learning moment for those students who have also are much higher than that student who's shooting low left. They get to learn how to correct the people in their span of influence when they go to the range with them. They get to be a little bit more well-rounded, a little bit more well-regulated. Now they can pass on information more, and that's going to reach more people. I used to say, I still do every once in a while, I killed a lot of bad guys in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places that we've been because I taught a lot of Marines how to fight with guns. And I may have not have killed them all with my own hands or my own rifle or my own shots, but my influence and my training has killed a lot of bad guys. And I sleep well at night because of that. And I think that's awesome. And if I can help my students also be able to pass on the information better at the end of the class, I'm not wasting their time by fixing the student. I'm using that time more effectively than I would be having them shoot another tight group that they could already do. Now they're learning how to pass that information on. So I don't think it hurts anything.
I think the answer to your question earlier is smart marketing, number one, with the black belt teaching the class for
yeah.
But I'm going to expand on that question, and I'd like both of your opinion, you, Daniel, first, and then Corinne. Let's take it beyond that, because you said if you have some really good students that can help the guy next to him. What do you do when you have that the know-it-all student that's kind of just overshadowing your class? What do you guys do?
I bet Corinne's good at these. Go ahead, Corinne. I know what I do, but go ahead. I want to hear yours.
I think that it depends on the personality, but I do know what you're talking about. I'm trying to think how I've handled it. I think I still want that student's participation in class. So however, unless it gets disruptive to the point where, the other students aren't able to learn, I always, maybe because I'm a mom, but I want to make sure that they understand that I think that they're a great student and a great shooter. But there's reasons behind the way that I teach things, and I'm always happy to explain it. And then I think what helps is when you can demo and give if you can prove what you're saying is true. If you can, and I know that there's a lot of instructors that will say, don't demo in front of your students because what if you can't do what you're saying that they should do? Well, then maybe you should spend more time on the range. Daniel was able to stand up to the line next to me and shoot bullet holes and have me try to shoot the same bullet hole and beat my butt. And you know what that makes, even though I wasn't ever doubting his skills or doubting what he was telling me, for me to be able to go, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's not just, you know, reading it down a curriculum and then cashing checks. You know, he really believes it. It works. And here's the proof. So, I mean, I try to be polite, and thankfully I haven't had a student so rude I've had to kick them out. But at the other time, I mean, my hair's up on the range and I know how to take it seriously and take control of the situation. But I think if you can demo and prove that what you're saying has value, that usually will shut them down. It
is rare that I have somebody in my class that's like the sniper, like, what about this? Well, I do it this way. I'm like, well, that's cool. It's a good way to do it. You know, I'm the same personality in the class. Am I lying, Corinne? Like, I'm joking, laughing, having fun. Like, I'm the same guy. I don't yell at people. I don't yell at the guy who knows it all. I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. You know, like I'm going to think about that. Can you show me that at our next break? And I'm going to check that out because I'm about to go test it before I really do it. But that's new to me, and I want to know more about it. And I'll do that in a class. If a guy just keeps chiming in, everybody gets an opportunity to chime in my class, whether it's the patrol rifle problem solver or it's the handgun class. And I stole this from Steve Fisher, and I'm pretty sure he may have stolen it from the late Pat Rogers. I'm not sure. But he's a big influence on Steve. And Steve's a good friend of mine. And if you ever get a chance to take a class with Steve Fisher, go jump in it. Steve is great. He's not for everybody. He rubs people the wrong way. He's kind of gruff and everything else. But I like that about him. He's a big teddy bear. But Steve I took a class with him. And after we did some major events, we spent an hour on something, a concept, an idea. And maybe it was a string of a few concepts that led to one thing. Everybody come in. Let's talk. What did you get out of this? Where are you at right now? Like, what kind of problems are you having? What kind of gears fell on you? Everything else. And everybody talks. Points at everybody. Everybody talks. Everybody is forced to give their input on what they learned, what they didn't learn, and then they do it. And you got to make them do it for like 2 times. By the time you get to the third one, you can't get them to shut up. You got to move through them a little bit faster. And then by the end of day 2, it's like everybody is like it opens the class up to questions and talking so much faster. It's been one of the most effective things that I've added to my classes in the past 5 years. And I added it like 2 years ago after I took my first class with Steve. I added it immediately. As soon as I saw what was happening in that class, like the third time Steve did it, I was like, this is now a permanent part of my classes. It was that profound. And I think that helps solve a lot of the problem. I value the students' input. I told Corinne's class, I tell every class this, you take one person away from any class that I've ever taught, that class would not have been as good. It just wouldn't have been as good without that one person's influence, the thing they added, the thing they said, the things they found, the things that they demonstrated in front of people. Take one person away, and it wouldn't be as good.
So I do have a question for both Corinne and Daniel. So as Andy knows and Jeremy is aware of as well, when I train instructors, I give them a whole, battery of handouts for them to take with them. And, this is how, you can learn and do more and do better. And one of the things that I hand out is a 3 or 4 page document of what I call our pro tips. And, we keep adding to this list over and over again. And, I just recently posted again, hey, instructors, give me your pro tips. And Corinne and Daniel, I want to know what your pro tips are. And I know that Andy recently had sent something to me that he wanted to talk to me about, how we're using these pro tips. But we'll get with you, Andy, on Saturday, or actually Friday when I get to Albuquerque. But Corinne, let's start with you and go over to Daniel after that. What is your pro tip for an instructor? So when I go in and I get these gals that just want to go out there and like Daniel was talking about, that circle of influence, and they want to, embark down a path and take people, through a journey in firearms. What is your pro tip for them? Like, so my pro tip number 2 is never go downrange with a stapler without having extra staples with you, because invariably your stapler is going to run out of staples, right? So it's just kind of stuff like that. What would you give me that I can write down on a piece of paper and hand to an instructor and say, this is pro tip number 99 from Corinne?
Oh, this could be fun. This requires some thinking. I could probably come up with hundreds of these.
That's what I was going to say. Really, there can be hundreds of them, because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, pro tip, I get super excited when I'm talking about things I'm passionate about. And especially when I feel like I'm about to say something that's going to blow their minds, not me saying it, but the information. And I start to talk way too fast. And I try to share too much. So I would say it can start to feel sometimes like you're feeding the students information through a fire hose.
Mm-hmm.
Pick and choose the most important, most valuable points to put stress on. And then down the line and through the class, you can produce more evidence that points to those points and go this. And Rick Staples would do this by saying, okay, this is how we're going to do this, and just wait, because all is going to be revealed. Here's the principle. All will be revealed. And then 4 years later, he'll say, you know why I told you to put your elbow here, right? Because of this draw stroke that I taught you the first time you came to me. Oh my gosh. Because it also relates to this Krav Maga strike, because it also relates to retention in the holster, because all blah, 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 blah. So don't feed too much information all at once quickly, because you're so excited to share. Don't talk too quickly. And Daniel, why don't you bounce one off, and then that might make me think of another one.
You just reminded me of something, and I don't know how we would word this for a pro tip, but I forget exactly what you said to me on one of the breaks. But you said something to me about the class. So I don't babysit and hold hands in my classes. I don't go into every single detail of what this finger should be doing. I'm not going to talk to you for an hour about how to reload the handgun. I'm going to give you the basic mechanics of it, how things should be, and then I'm going to demonstrate it kind of slow mo. I'm going to demonstrate it as fast as I can do it. And I leave a lot for the student to figure out and for me to correct while they're all doing reps on the line, doing different things. And if you ever read, I'm a writer, right? Like, so I'm working on a screenplay. I'm late for a project that's due right now. I'm almost done with a master's degree in English and creative writing. And I read constantly and listen to audiobooks constantly. And when I have a book that I'm listening to or I'm reading, and the author is just holding my hand and giving me every bit of information and not leaving anything out for me to figure out, and not leaving anything, and just describing everything that's just completely obvious, and then explaining to me what they just said means. And I'm like, that just drives me insane. Closing the book, all over. I don't need that. I'm not an idiot. Your students are not idiots, right? Give them the information they need to succeed and to fail, and then make corrections.
Okay, so I'm writing down here. I'm not trying to be silent, but I'm taking notes as you guys are talking.
I tried to give you the line. I tried to give you the whole line there at the end. I don't know if that will work.
Yeah. I'm literally going to put these in this document that we give out to our instructor candidates, because I feel like, most people that train other people don't understand how we learn, and like those two pro tips right there, spot on. I absolutely love them. They haven't been written down yet, but I'm going to add them and give you guys credit for it. And every time we train instructor candidates, we will give those out. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Hey, Corinne, what do you wish you knew prior to taking this class?
I wish I knew it was going to be that hot outside. It was a hot weekend. No, I'm grateful for the experience that I've had before taking the class. Like I said, I feel like I was prepared for that class, but it wasn't easy, and I was challenged. I don't think, I'm trying to think if I've been to a class where I was prepared at that perfect level to be not comfortable, but to be able to go, okay, here's, when Daniel's saying something, I'm able to go down my list of, he'll say something and I'll bounce it off of what I know or what I've done in my experience and go, yeah, that makes sense. Or, you know what, when he asks us what we think about that, I've got a question. I was able to really, really process and take in a lot of information because of the level of prepared that I was. And yet, be able to do stuff I'd never done before. So what do I wish that I would have known? I really am going to be lame on the answer to that question. really feel like I was prepared for the class.
Hey, while you're thinking, Corinne, you said something that reminded me of something. So that's the beauty of having the debriefs after each major event. Corinne is on this level. And then there's a lot of people at different levels out there in the class. What they bring up in the debrief before it gets to her are things that she hasn't thought about in 3 years, because she's worked on those. She used to focus, but now she's kind of got that. She's got it put away somewhere, Japanese without thought, like Mushin, like she can just do it, unconscious competence. And the other guy, whenever they're saying things that she's reminding me, like, yes, that's that little, that's right. I got to think about that sometime, because I see myself slipping, and she catches something that she hasn't thought about in a long time. Then Corinne will like drop something that she's struggling with, and these other people will be like, man, like I haven't thought about that, but I'm writing that down. Like that's the beauty of having those and having the multiple skill levels.
Yeah, I like that concept of having your after action or your debrief after every major event. We do it after every day of our class, and that's definitely, you look at somebody like Corinne that is at that level. I sit there and I go back and take defensive pistol 1 whenever I can, and I come out and I take defensive pistol 2, and we start getting into commands and communication, and I'm down on a knee, like for instance in defensive pistol 1, and I'm on a knee and I yell coming up, and the instructor behind me is like, hey, this is defensive pistol 1. We don't have to start working about, talking about communication right now. And I'm like, if I'm on a knee and I'm coming up, I'm yelling coming up. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's what's been ingrained with me in my training. So I like the idea of actually having a debrief after every major, lesson or drill. And that's going to give more people more chances to learn. That's a great concept. I really like that.
Well, I think I would struggle with having to wait to hold my impressions till the end of the day, because they're going to have left me. I'm already going to forget. Wait, I meant to ask him why we do this at this point, or why I struggled with this, or can I get some clarification? Or like, really, when you're in that semicircle, if you have 12 people in class, you get 11 ideas, not just Daniel's idea, but you get 11 ideas or the interpretation of the idea. And it really does make you think about that idea 11 different ways. And I mean, that was, I don't think I would like to wait to the end of the day. I liked being able to kind of dissect each drill. Did this make sense? What's the value in this? What did you think about it? I feel grateful that we did do it after every drill instead of waiting to the end of the day, because I would have just at that point been so exhausted. I'd be like, good class, Daniel. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Instead of really giving some honest, thoughtful feedback.
For the law enforcement officer that's considering this class, Corinne, and that isn't at your level, he's the average patrol officer. He's taken a 1 or 2 rifle courses before. What advice do you have for that guy or gal?
In the description of the course, Daniel says, bring the gun or the type of gun, optic, clothing, kit that you actually wear. Please do that. There was a point in the class also where we were working. Daniel, is it bounding Overwatch? Is it bounding forward with your partner and bounding back? I think I'm getting the terminology.
Yeah. Well, we were doing a drill where we were, you had basically parking garage kind of thing, like multiple vehicles or pieces of cover where we had to move to point B for whatever reason and do that safely without muzzling each other and everything else.
And we also had to get to a downed person, apply a tourniquet, whatever you're going to do, and then get back to our partner. This is real world stuff. On July 6th of 2018, my husband and his partner were involved in an officer involved shooting. My husband had his AR and his partner had his shotgun, and they had to communicate and divide this person's attention and take cover behind vehicles as they were getting shot at with an AK-47. And this is not, it's not hyperbole. It's not, you guys know, you LEOs, you're being murdered every day. Okay. So if, you not only need to have the mindset, but you need to have the skill set and you need to be realistic. If you can bring your patrol rifle to class, bring it. If you can't, duplicate it. Duplicate the optics. If you don't have an optic, it's iron sights. That's what my husband had to use was iron sights. Use that because you don't get to train during your fight. Okay. That's not a great time to acquire new skills. So please, because I am married to a cop, please train so that you can go home to your spouses and your kids, because it's a war. You guys go into battle every night, a potential battle every night. So please be realistic about that.
So I want to add something to that really quick. Can you do me a favor, or do all of us a favor? And if your husband is in the house with you, if he can come on screen, if not, that's fine too. But I would like to thank him for his service, because we're not here without guys like that. We're not here without gals like her. You know what I mean? So thank you guys for your service, all you first responders out there.
Thank you. He actually just waved to me a few minutes ago. He's on duty tonight.
Cool. Well, we wish him luck tonight and pray for him to come back home safe.
Thank you. And thank you, Daniel, for putting on classes like this, specifically for law enforcement.
Yeah, I think there's I think that's one of the things that the law enforcement community it lacks is training. And a lot of people say, oh, there's not enough training. Well, nobody wants to pay for it. So I know a lot of these guys are coming out there on their own dime and getting that taken care of. Daniel, I
almost never have a class where I don't have 2 seats that I gave away to law enforcement officers in the local area. It's pretty rare that ever happens, is that I don't have at least 2 seats for them that I've given to them.
Are you finding that most of the LE guys they're paying for it out of their pocket, or their departments are covering it? What does that funding look like?
Some of them pay for it out of pocket, but when I know some in the area, or I reach out to a local department, I'm coming in, I'm like, hey, I got 2 seats in this class. Send me 2 guys, and they don't cost anything. And I think that happens a lot. But there's a lot of guys training for it. There's a little pocket in this country up in Alliance, Ohio, that is just a crazy place where just officers come from all over and train there. You know, I've got a good friend of mine who's a SWAT commander, Chicago PD. And then I've got multiple, like probably getting close to hundreds of officers and tactical officers from the Midwest area, you know, Ohio and surrounding, and some from Canada, some Canadian Mounted Police up there, and that jump in my classes like every year in Ohio. And it's funny, but that Alliance is just everywhere I teach and everywhere I've been. It is like I don't know what they've inspired there. And I think a lot of it is Pat Rogers. And he's got a presence there, even though, you know, he's not there anymore, but there's just this learning thing, this weird magic at Alliance, and people come there to learn. They come there to train. There's officers coming from all over the places. I've never seen more law enforcement officers in training than in Alliance whenever I teach there or I'm taking a class there. It's a cool place. I wish we could replicate that everywhere.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things coming out of there. It seems like they open up to quite a few different instructors as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's awesome. I feel like we could stay on here for a couple more hours, but I'd like to get you guys the rest of your evenings back. Corinne, what's one piece of advice you have for our listeners, whether it's firearms related or not?
Oh, man, or firearms related or not. I would say take up a new skill. And that's what firearms is. And a lot of people use it just as, well, I need a new hobby. I need to go do something. I think you should learn how to shoot a gun. But when you do take up a new skill, really focus on the fundamentals and understand that whatever discipline you are pursuing, the experts in that field are just the people who have mastered the basics, that are perfect at the basics. It's, you know, that's all that I would say. You know, Itzhak Perlman can play a really damn good scale. You know, learn how to play a scale well. Learn how to, you know, load your gun and unload your gun perfectly every time. Just focus on the basics, and not the sexy stuff, sexy YouTube stuff. Just the fundamentals.
That's awesome. And what about you, Daniel? What's your piece of advice? Oh, firearms or anything? Geez, like how long should this answer be? You know, I've done some things in my life, and I saw a lot of people's lives cut short at young ages. And at some point in all of that, and after I left the Marine Corps, I don't know when it happened, but I bought an RV, started living in it, traveling around, getting all over the place. We are fragile. We are these weak little things. And I don't care how much you train, how much time you put in, how much time you spend working on the gun, fighting, whatever else you do. There is someone out there. Varg Freeborn had an article recently, said something that I'm going to mess up his paraphrase, but there was someone out there who, with a limited skill set, is going to be better than you that day at some little small detail, and he's going to kill you. It's going to be over. So we should prepare. We should fight for those things. But man, remember that this gun stuff is fun. Like, have a good time. Be safe. Have fun. Life is fun. Life is short. Like, you are not going to live long. I'm a whisper in the wind on this pale blue dot, if you want to quote Carl Sagan, right? Like, I'm insignificant. Nobody's going to remember me in 100 years. Maybe I'll have a book written somewhere that somebody reads in 100 years or finds it somewhere or uses it to keep warm one night whenever the world's going to crap. I don't know. That'll be my contribution to society. But I remember that you only get to live one time. Have some fun, and don't take shit so serious on the internet.
Amen to that. So I'm already taking Corinne's advice by taking up a new skill, and it's something that I hated in school, and that was reading. And to be full disclaimer, I'm listening to Audible a lot now, and I'm listening to books and trying to better myself. And now I'm finding myself in classes, and when I talk to people, I bring a lot of the experiences that I learned from books to classes and just general advice and stuff like that. So Daniel and Corinne, I need at least one good book from both of you guys, because I have 4 Audible credits that I need to use up.
One good book. We talking fiction, nonfiction, self-help, leadership, business?
Oh, man.
Party Boys.
I read Hard Boys.
I'm not a big fiction guy, because I'm always gun guy, right? I'm always trying to learn and be better and be more respectful and better customer service. And how can I bring this out and explain it better? And the big part is know a little bit more what I thought I didn't know. So let's go with kind of like anything real, anything in real in that.
So I've just finished today. I finished a couple really good books recently, but today I finished the David Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me. And about mindset. And I don't know if you're familiar with who David Goggins is, but he's a Navy SEAL that runs ultra marathons and breaks world records. And he had a really rough start in life, abusive father and stuff like that. So I think that one is a good one for rethinking your potential as far as what your brain is capable of doing. But I can tell you the one that kind of gets me fired up is When Violence is the Answer by Tim Larkin. That one, everybody should read. There's those ones that everybody should read, like The Gift of Fear. Obviously, it should be like everybody needs to read that. But When Violence is the Answer, I mean, that's the one that I'll make my daughter read here soon. Sorry, but I mean, if she's gonna learn how to punch and kick and elbow and knee, you need to know why you're doing that. And it's not to get a point on a pad on a Taekwondo, mat, but why you're actually doing it. So that one fired me up, but also kind of reaffirmed that it's okay for me to want to just destroy. The point is to destroy whatever is coming at you. So I would say that's my answer. When Violence is the Answer by Tim Larkin. And I also have Audible. It's awesome. I love Audible.
Totally. I wish somebody would write the book because we had another instructor here. His name was Instructor Tim Cash from Phoenix. And he said, "Fight like the third monkey." I wish somebody would create a book and use that title.
I'm so tired of hearing that.
A tip about the Audible: listen to it on 1.25 or 1.5 speed. It'll help you. You'll get through those books a little bit quicker, and it'll force you to actually comprehend what's going on.
So Daniel, you'll hate my hat.
What does it say?
It's the third monkey.
Oh God!
I like the third monkey.
I like the sweat stains.
Yeah.
I thought you were holding up like it was a competitor at Gun Mag Warehouse, because you should be shopping and get your magazines at gunmagwarehouse.com. Right. So Extreme Ownership, one of the best books out there on leadership and also how you apply to your daily life. Just Extreme Ownership is a great book. Jocko Willink. Awesome. You should check that one out. Million Miles in 1,000 Years. That's some fiction. I've got tons of nonfiction stuff that I've read and liked. I can hit you up with some stuff offline. Any fiction wise, anything by Neil Gaiman. All of Harry Potter books are awesome. I don't care what anybody says. You can flame me if you want. Man, there's just tons of good stuff. I love Stephen King. Tim O'Brien recently started reading some of his stuff. And, it's awesome. Read The Things They Carried about Vietnam. Powerful stuff. It's cool.
I love Harry Potter, by the way. I really like the movies and the book. So I know like 10 spells. Don't make me whip them out.
That's awesome. Justin, what do you have for our listeners, buddy?
Me, I'm going to come with the I'm going to side with Corinne and all of our blue, red, green guys out there that are on our front lines every day. And I'm going to say, thank a cop. Go up to a police officer or a firefighter and shake their hand and say thank you. I'm going to say, if you walk into a Subway and you're up at the counter and you've got a cop that's 3 guys behind you that you pay for their meal, I'm going to say that, if you have an opportunity to, shake one of these guys' hands or these gals' hands and thank them, they wrote a blank check for us. That's my next door neighbor is a cop, and, I do ride-alongs with him and I enjoy spending time with him. We do family vacations together with their family. And, he's one of those guys that wrote that blank check, and he did it for a cause. So I'm going to say, thank our blue, thank our first responders, thank our red, thank our green.
Love it. Andy, do you have anything for our listeners?
Since Jeremy, let's start that over. Since Judson followed Corinne's thing, I'm going to go with Daniel's thing too. Learn and have fun. We talk about self-defense and all this stuff. It's what we do, but we often forget that part. Learn and have fun.
I love it. And then my parting advice is, if you want to win some cool stuff, head over to afteractionproject.com/giveaway. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite audio podcast players. Go to shawstrategies.com. Check out Daniel Shaw, what he's doing. If he's coming to a town near you, get into one of those classes. I personally prefer handgun courses, but you got an LEO or LE buddy, make sure you pass that along to those guys as well, because it's definitely some much needed training for our folks out there to help them stay safer and increase the likelihood that they'll go home to their loved ones. It's your life. It's your safety. Did you have something, Justin?
Yeah, I had one more thing. If you're going to SHOT Show, make sure you invest in some hand sanitizer.
Don't shake hands. I hug and fist bump. That's it. You get a hug or a fist bump.
There you go.
Yeah, SHOT Show's coming up, man. When is that?
Next week.
All right. Well, you guys have fun out there. A lot of vitamin C and all that other good stuff. Remember, it's your life. It's your safety and protection. It's your responsibility. We'll see y'all next week. Man, we really hope you enjoyed listening to that episode as much as we did interviewing and having our guests on. Be sure to share this with your friends and family and head over to patreon.com/afteractionproject. We'd love to have you on as a guest panelist, and be sure to check out those other rewards that we have for our Patreons.
If you're a recent graduate of a firearms-related training course and would like to join us on our show, or if you'd like us to review a specific firearm-related training course or instructor, shoot an email to show@afteractionproject.com. Remember to join a local firearms advocacy organization. As always, stay safe, shoot straight, and remember to secure your firearms so that unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them.